Rachel White is a cocktail waitress at a truck stop strip club in an interstate cowtown in Central California. As her life spirals out of control, poverty and paranoia force her to make a string of increasingly desperate decisions. Decisions that will lead her to the Hell Patrol, a paramilitary organization of hot rod driving mercenaries that hunt demons for fame and fortune. This is Hell Patrol Origins. Chapter 2. Rachel's shift passed uneventfully. One of the guys from the bachelor party got a little too hands-on with Tiffany, but Johnny was right behind her and shut it down quick. The white-collar human boys, not used to being in trouble on the wrong side of the tracks, were quick to make reparations. Tiffany got a financial apology, and when they closed their tab and left, Rachel got tipped out better than she expected. Before she went back into the dressing room to change back into street clothes and leave, she took one last scan of the room. The creeper guy at table 2 that had been tipping her well but ignoring the other girls looked like he was getting up and leaving. Johnny caught Rachel's eyes. He nodded towards her, then nodded towards the creep, then looked back at her. Rachel wasn't scared. The guy looked like another white-collared dead-ender in some boring career. He had a receding hairline and a bit of a gut under his button-up shirt. He didn't look like he'd be much of a fight if it came to that. Rachel imagined that he had some kind of incredibly boring human job, like selling vinyl siding, or holding down a cubicle in some office farm. She went into the locker room and grabbed her ratty clothes out of the locker, stripped out of her sex trash, and got ready to leave. "You want me to walk you out?" Johnny asked. He did that for all the girls. It was his job and his choice. "I'm fine, Johnny," Rachel told him. "That guy left 2 minutes after you got off the floor. Didn't take any dances or put any dollar bills on the main stage the whole time he was in here. He's got a thing for you, Ray," Johnny said. "It's weird, but I guess it's possible I'm just his type," Rachel shrugged. "Just call the club if something weird happens on your walk home, okay? Anything. Don't take any chances. You know I don't like it when you girls get hurt." "We're not girls, Johnny. We're tieflings. We've been getting shit on by humans our whole lives. I can take care of myself." "Rachel, I trust you to take care of yourself. But I don't trust cops," Johnny said. "I don't want to hear your voice on a 911 tape on the news." Rachel shook her head and walked out. On the walk home, she passed the Hell Patrol office again. The sergeant was there, still standing in the window, as if he had never left. Rachel wondered how much coffee he drank in a day to accomplish that. She had never walked past the place without him being there. Seeing him reminded her of what Valerie had said. Maybe she was too stuck up. Maybe the whole black and white tiefling act would be a hit, and she was just overthinking it. Of course she didn't like to think about her demonic heritage. No tiefling did. But people had told her that white tieflings, porcelain white tieflings like her, were rare. That some especially fucked up and evil demon was her father. An archdemon, a general of hell. Maybe one of the original rebel angels out of heaven, if the Bible was real. Demons were real, and apparently the war ended when the Vatican allowed the rebel demon sanctuary in purgatory. So, theoretically, at least that much of it existed. Valerie was really freaky, though. She loved her job. She touched herself and moaned on stage. A lot. Like, not faking, actually enjoying herself. Rachel didn't mind the adult industry as a job and an act, but she wasn't sure if she wanted to be close to Valerie like that. Whatever Valerie did to herself on stage, she'd probably tried to get Rachel into, and Rachel wasn't ready for a lot of things. She wasn't a virgin, but she wasn't an exhibitionist either. For today, it would be a no. No Hell Patrol and no weird girl ebony and ivory striptease. The tips that she made that night and the rent that she paid that month were telling her that she didn't need to go down that road. Yet. She was lost in thought as she crossed the street and looked up randomly while in the middle of the crosswalk to see a familiar pair of eyes on her, waiting at the intersection for her to cross. It was him. The creeper from the club with the receding hairline. The guy at table 2. He was driving a late model, champagne-colored Honda. He was staring right at her through the windshield. Rachel only froze for half a heartbeat, then forced herself to keep walking. They had left the club at roughly the same time. Such a chance encounter was a possibility. But Rachel was a girl. A tiefling girl in a bad neighborhood in a society that victimized tieflings. She didn't believe in coincidences. She didn't believe Johnny when he said it, but she knew he was right. She picked up her pace and forced herself to stay calm. She was still in control. The creep was in a car. That was a disadvantage. She could change direction on the sidewalk with the turn of her heel and walk the other direction. She could walk back to the club and stay there, or she could just duck through some alleys, take some left turns, lose the creep. As long as she could use pedestrian mobility to her advantage, she had the upper hand. She kept walking, pretending not to notice him following her. He turned the corner and rolled up the street after her. He was driving slow, always around 30 feet behind her, stopping at red lights looking inconspicuous. But Rachel knew. She could feel his eyes boring into her back. It made something in her shoulders twitch. Something that was old and demonic and instinctual. It was a feeling she got when she was in danger, like if there was a pair of succubus wings on her back that she never got from her demon parent, that she would flap and fly up into the sky to escape from harm. Those phantom wings itched now. They squirmed and itched on her shoulder blades with nerves that only existed in her mind. He was still behind her when she reached the liquor store, and the fear built up in her mind. Fear of things that she didn't think of, but Johnny did. Rachel didn't think she needed saving at first because she didn't think the human could overpower her. But Johnny was a step ahead. Johnny was thinking of cops, of 911 calls, of human authorities, of stories that cops may or may not believe, scenes that would be hard to explain. Rachel didn't live in a society that had her best interest in mind. She saw the gangbangers loitering in front of the liquor store and felt a sudden twinge of hope. They were the same guys from earlier, gang tieflings from the orphanage that knew her. They wouldn't hurt her, and they might have something to help her. The least she could do was stop to talk to them, in hopes that it would drive off the creep. But Rachel had a new idea now, one she should have thought of sooner, one she would act on now, and refuse to be anyone's victim. She walked up to the thugs, and she noticed out of the corner of her eye that as she did, the champagne Honda peeled off the road into a parking lot on the other side of the street, as if he had some business to do on the other side of the strip mall. Rachel wasn't convinced. "I need a strap," she told the gangbanger. "I don't know what you're talking about, girlie," the gang tiefling said. "A heater, a piece, a gun. Sell me one." The one gang tiefling turned to the other. "Is this chick 5-0? "Nah, she's straight. We were kids in the same orphanage. I seen her around. She works that strip club down the street," he explained. "Maybe I've got a piece for you. What you gonna do for me, babe? You looking for a boyfriend? Somebody protect you?" he asked. "My boyfriends are Smith and Wesson. I've got cash," Rachel said. The gang tiefling nodded. "Yo, step into my office." They led her around to the side of the building, off the street. "Listen," the gang tiefling said. "I'm only telling you this because we got history at the orphanage. I've got a piece I can sell you, but it's hot, okay? It was used in a crime. We have to get rid of it." "I'll take it," Rachel said. "You understand that if you get caught holding this strap and the cops run the serials, it's going to come up stolen. And if they run ballistics, it'll be attached to a shooting. Right?" he asked. "I'll ditch it when I don't need it anymore," Rachel said. "Do you know what's going to happen to you if you get pinched and you tell the cops who you got this gun from?" the gangster asked. "That's not going to happen," Rachel said. "Yeah, it better not. $50. "I thought you were trying to get rid of it. I gotta eat too, girl. You want it or not? I ain't stupid. I saw that dude rolling behind you in that Civic. Don't get caught slipping, girl," he said. Rachel knew he was right. Street tieflings weren't criminals because they were stupid. They were criminals because there was nowhere else for them to go. There wasn't a tiefling in the hood that couldn't spot a tail on their tail. She pulled a roll of bills and a rubber band from her pocket and handed it to the gangbanger. He pulled a .38 special out of his waistband and handed it to her butt first. She took it, pointing the barrel down, out of sight. "You know where the safety is on that thing? It's that little switch right there. You got 6 shots, fully loaded. Don't shoot until he's too close for you to miss," the gangster said. "Yeah, thanks. You guys come into the club sometime. I'll get the girls to take care of you," Rachel said. "Yeah, sure. Now get the fuck out of here and put that shit in your purse. There's cops out tonight." Rachel left the liquor store and got back out onto the street. The gun was in her purse. She walked with her hand inside of it, her fingers touching the grips, ready to pull it. The cold and heavy feeling of that steel revolver made her feel comfortable, safe. The champagne Honda pulled out of the strip mall it was parked in and whispered up the road behind her again. Rachel was just a few more blocks from her projects and the reassuring fences and gates, the bars on her windows. Just a few more blocks. Her heart almost stopped when she saw red and blue flashers ahead. She felt like her lungs had leapt up into her throat when she saw the cop car. Where the fuck were the pigs when you needed them? She didn't want to see them now that she was carrying a hot gun in her purse. If they harassed her now, she'd have bigger problems than the creep from the club. As she walked closer, she saw the scene. 2 cops, human men, had Alex the hooker sitting on the curb. All she had to do was walk by, ignore them, and hope that they ignored her. She walked closer to the buildings, as close as possible, a shadow on the sidewalk. She hoped the cops would ignore her while they harassed the streetwalker. She wasn't one of them. She wasn't on the corner dressed like that. Not a target. At least she hoped. As she passed the cops and Alex sitting on the curb, she saw the ice-cold, deadpan stare in the streetwalker's eyes. Her eyes didn't plead or beg. There was none of that futile emotion left in her. Now, she just sat and waited for the worst to be over. Both girls knew what was going to happen. The cops never actually took the hookers in. All the tieflings knew that. Instead, they'd stuff her in the back of their cruiser, roll down to her motel room, and take a free ride on her. That's what they always did when they caught the tiefling hookers. As she walked past, a cop looked up, noticed her. "That one of ours?" he asked his partner, pointing at her. Rachel's mind raced. She began to believe that she had really fucked up now. The gun felt hot in her purse, like an ingot of molten iron. There she was, a tiefling girl, being followed home by some creep, with a stolen gun in her purse, and 10 feet away from cops that picked up tiefling hookers. "I don't think so," the other cop said, adjusting his duty belt. "She's not one of my friends. She has a real job at that place down the street. She walks past my spot every day on her way to work," Alex said. "That's the kind of alibi a hooker would make for another hooker. Excuse me, miss, can we talk to you?" one of the cops said. Fuck, Rachel thought. This is it. This is how I end up in prison. "I'm telling the truth," the hooker said. "You stay quiet, you'll make it worse," the first cop replied. "Is there something wrong, officer?" Rachel asked, fear gripping her neck. "You have ID on you, miss?" the cop asked. "Yes, sir. Can I reach in my purse and get it for you?" Rachel asked. "Of course. Slowly, please," the cop said. Rachel felt the gun in her purse burning hot. She fished around past it, felt her billfold clip in the bottom, wrapped her fingers around it, pulled it out slowly. She handed it to the cop. "Stay here while I go run this," the first cop said, taking her ID back to the cruiser. "Where are you going tonight, miss?" the other cop asked. "Coming home from work. I work down the street at the club. I'm a cocktail waitress," Rachel admitted. "You can call the club if you want. I'll give you the number." "That would help your case," the cop asked and pulled out his cell phone. Rachel listed off Johnny's number. The cop dialed it. It rang once and Rachel's heart beat. It rang twice and Rachel's heart beat. It rang 3 times and Johnny picked up. Rachel remembered how to breathe again. "This is Officer Bill Gibson, Los Rojas PD. Who am I speaking to?" "Uh-huh. Yes." "You work at the club?" "Yes." "No, sir, just a routine stop. She's not in trouble." "What's your relationship with her?" Okay, yeah, cocktail waitress." "Thank you, sir. She'll be fine. If she doesn't come back with any warrants, she'll be on her way," the cop said. Right about then, the other cop came back with her ID. "She's clean. No warrants, no priors," he said. "Her story checks out. Come on, Gary, let's go. We got what we wanted. Miss, you move along now. You're free to go," Officer Gibson said. Rachel took her ID back with numb fingers. She dropped it into her purse mechanically, turned like a robot, and walked down the street, her neck stiff, refusing to look behind her. She heard the snapping sound of handcuffs, and Alex being hauled up to her feet. She heard the doors of the cop car open and close. The cruiser took off up the street, with Alex in the back seat. As she expected, the cop car took a left turn at the first light, towards Alex's motel, instead of straight forward, towards downtown and the police station. She was alone again, alone with the gun that now felt in the purse like a cement brick. Then she looked over her shoulder, saw the champagne Honda, and the feeling of the steel against her fingertips was cool and calming again. She forced herself to walk slow and inconspicuous for 2 blocks. But when she finally got within a block of her building, she broke into a sprint, slapping the concrete as fast as her ratty old Chuck Taylors could carry her. She tore open the security gate, slammed it behind her, ran all the way up the stairs to her studio apartment, and locked the door and sat with her back against it. She didn't cry until she felt her phone vibrating in her purse. She pulled it out. "Ray, are you okay? I just talked to cops," Johnny asked her. "I'm okay, Johnny. They almost pinched me. They were picking up hookers," Rachel explained. "Where are you?" Johnny asked. "I'm fine. I'm in my apartment," she said. You don't sound fine. I'll get over it, Rachel said. I told you to call me if things got weird, Ray. You call me when you leave your place for work tomorrow, okay? And don't leave your apartment a minute before that. You stay home tonight, okay? Johnny demanded. I will. I gotta go back to work. Evening crowd is coming in, Johnny said. You call, okay, Rachel? You can always call. You know I won't let anyone hurt my girls. Yeah, thanks, Johnny, Rachel said, hung up the phone. She stopped crying. She got up to her knees, peeked out the window overlooking the street outside. The champagne Honda stopped at the intersection in front of her complex, sat at the light, then pulled a U-turn in the intersection and went back the way it came. Rachel left her purse where she dropped it. She crawled over to her mattress on the floor, plugged in her phone on the charger, and then rolled all her blankets up around her. She stayed there until she fell asleep. She went to bed without dinner. The trauma had destroyed her appetite. Rachel woke up late the next morning. Her makeup smeared like grease across her porcelain face. Stains like crude oil and tire tracks on her pillowcase. She sighed at the inconvenience, pulled the pillowcase off the pillow, and rolled off the mattress. She struggled to her feet and got into the bathroom, then the shower stall. She dropped her clothes on the floor of the shower and then turned the water on. She blasted the pillowcase with the shower head to clean it, and then threw it like a rag on the bottom of the shower. She started to clean herself, then realized that the black makeup would probably stain the wad of clothing and the tile grout in the floor of the shower. She decided she just didn't give a shit. She washed her face, soaped up and rinsed off, and then turned the shower off, leaving the wet clothes in it. She dried off, threw on a ragged pair of Daisy Dukes and an old concert t-shirt from some band that stopped touring before she was born, and she shambled from the bathroom to her kitchenette. She had food to cook, but she couldn't muster the effort. She reached into the freezer and pulled out a microwave burrito and threw it in the microwave. She brewed coffee. It was the most depressing breakfast she had eaten since she moved into the apartment and had to eat dry cereal for a week to cover her deposit. As the coffee dripped, she sat and stared at her purse where she left it on the floor. Some of her possessions had scattered where she dropped it. The butt of the gun was visible, poking out the top of the purse. She contemplated taking the gun down to the drainage ditch behind her complex and throwing it into the flood channel. It would disappear downstream in a cloud of pesticides and silt when the floodwater from the farms up the valley irrigated the crops. Buying it was stupid. $50 down the drain, and it could have gotten her sent to prison. That $50 could have been some real food, or saved up to buy a car, or at least a new cocktail dress for work that fit better than the shapeless slut shack she crammed herself into every night. But the more she thought about disposing of it, the more she wanted to keep it. She could dodge cops. She could always toss it if she needed to. But the creeper was still out there. Cops would lock her up, but in prison she'd at least get 3 meals a day and not have to pay rent. If the stalker from the club grabbed her, there was no telling what that was. Sexual assault was the least her imagination could conjure. What if he was Jack the Ripper? What if he made her into a skin dress? There was no way she was tossing that gun. She'd rather go back downtown in a cop car than find out what would happen to her if she got stuffed in the back of that champagne Honda. She might have to find a better way to keep it on her person, though. Maybe in her waistband or pocket the way the gang tieflings did. Leaving it in her purse might be too slow to get to when she needed it. If she wasn't so strapped for cash, she could have just walked into a pawn shop and bought a holster. As morning crept on, she woke up, but did not eat anything other than the microwave burrito and the cup of coffee she had forced herself to make. She had a list of chores to do. She wanted to take that tip money from last night to the secondhand store and buy some clothes. Maybe a pair of shoes if there were any good ones. But buying the hot gun off that gangster had changed that. Moreover, going outside was a bad idea. She had no idea what that creep did for work, if he worked at all. He could be out there, waiting, stalking her right now. She focused on an old picture of Danica Patrick in a fire suit, standing in front of her race car, her childhood heroine. When Rachel was a little girl, she wanted to be a race car driver. As soon as the orphanage let her outside its gates as a teenager, she was walking down to the local go-kart track to try to hitch rides. She would do anything to get some laps. Beg, borrow, steal. The guys that ran the place didn't let her on the track until after they shut down for the day because she was an insurance hazard. None of the helmets fit tieflings because of the horns. She would sweep out the place and take out the trash in exchange for the privilege. At 16, she scrounged together every dime she could find and pooled her money with some of the other orphans to buy a car. They found a shitbox 74 Volkswagen Super Beetle for $600 and bought it. They ripped out the interior, pulled the fenders off, patched the rust holes in the floor with some traffic signs that they stole off the street at night with a ladder and a wrench, and they hot-rodded the shit out of it. At least as much as a couple of broke teenagers could. They had it really hauling ass for about 3 months after they finally worked out all the problems. And then one night while the boys were out hooning, they lost control and ran into a drainage ditch, flooded and totaled it. Rachel never forgave them. She was a better driver than any of them. If she was behind the wheel, it never would have happened. How the hell do you let a 60 horsepower car get out from under you? This is me, she thought to herself. How did I get here? From the little girl that used to haul garbage bags and sweep floors to get laps at the go-kart track, to a cocktail waitress in a shitty strip club with a hot gun, getting stalked by some middle management cubicle rat serial killer in a budget Japanese sedan. When did the dream die? The words Hell Patrol floated through her mind. They had cars. They got cars just for signing up. They hit demons with cars, for fuck's sake. Maybe it was worth it, just to get back behind the wheel again. To actually have a car that was hers, that nobody else drove. It was probably the closest thing she'd ever get to actually being a race car driver. But tieflings in Hell Patrol, they could die. They did die. It wasn't exactly safe. Some of the demons they hunted were as big as a fucking car. Bigger. There was a reason they only let tieflings do it. Because they didn't give a shit if tieflings died. Rachel had to wonder what was worse. Dying in a blaze of glory, getting ripped limb from limb by imps after they pulled you out of your driver's seat, or living the safe life, the slow life, barely paying her rent every month with cocktail waitress tips, where she would be fine, until she got old and wasn't pretty and guys didn't tip her as much anymore, or some weirdo caught her walking home one night and made a skin dress out of her in his Buffalo Bill basement. Well, if the only choice is picking who turns me into a skin dress, maybe I should at least get a free car, Rachel thought, morbidly. At least when I could drive, I was happy. Rachel sat for a few hours lost in thought, wondering what to do, wondering where she had lost control of her life, or if she ever was in control of it. Eventually, an alarm on her phone went off, and it was time to go to work. She only hoped that the champagne Honda wasn't outside. She grabbed the gun, felt it in her hand. It didn't feel safer, but it did feel satisfying. Rachel figured if she had to be a skin dress, She'd at least make the son of a bitch work for it. She looked out the window onto the street, and there was no champagne Honda. Rachel gathered her things. She called Johnny on the phone. "Johnny, I'm leaving my apartment. I'm heading to work now," she told him. "Okay, if you're not here in 20 minutes, call me again. If I don't see or hear from you in that time, I'm coming out of the club and going down the street to find you," Johnny said, to the sound of the cats in my apartment meowing in the background. What? Hold on. Morty! Morticia! Dad's not home, Morticia. You're stuck with me. Go sit in the fucking fancy cardboard house I made you. Sorry. Alright. Rachel took a deep breath, hung up the phone, and left the apartment. When she got to A Street, she saw the streetwalker, this time on her side of the road. She stopped to say something. "Thanks for trying to protect me last night. I'm sorry I couldn't do anything to help you. I was holding something illegal," Rachel said. "I figured you were. I saw you go into the alley with those gangbangers up the street," the prostitute said. "Did the cops..." "They're not that bad. They don't pay, but they don't rough me up. They like the girls pretty when they pick us up. You know you had a tail last night, right? I saw that... the champagne Honda. Yeah, he followed me home from work," Rachel said. "Do you ever think about Hell Patrol?" the hooker asked. "Every day," Rachel said. "I remember you from the orphanage. You had that Volkswagen with Charles and Pete until they wrecked it. I figured you'd be a natural for that shit. You like cars." "You're Alex, right?" Rachel asked. "Yeah," Alex nodded. "Do you ever worry about your life? I mean, wouldn't it be safer to work at the strip club and not have to walk the streets?" Rachel asked. "The orphanage lost my paperwork when they discharged us at 18. I can't even prove I'm a U.S. citizen. I can't get a real job," Alex said. "I'm sorry," Rachel asked. "Doesn't really fucking matter anyways, does it? We've got Johns and crooked cops. You've got club stalkers, strippers, waitresses, whores. That's all there is for us. One's much like another in the end. We just disappear through the cracks," Alex said. "If it's that bleak, why aren't you already in Hell Patrol?" Rachel asked. "I don't know. Maybe there's a piece of me that still cares if I live or die and thinks I'll last longer out here. I barely know how to drive, but I do know these streets," Alex said. "I have to go to work. Maybe we should talk about this again. We could go in together. Maybe that would make us both brave enough," Rachel said. "Yeah, maybe it would be enough just to have a friend. Stay safe tonight, okay? I don't want to see that Honda following you home." "You too. Don't get caught by those sleazy cops." She continued down the street. The gangbangers weren't in front of the liquor store this afternoon, which probably meant they were running the blocks on the south side, breaking into houses to try to make a score. When Rachel got to the Hell Patrol office, she saw the staff sergeant in the window like she always did. But today, there was another person in there. A tiefling, wearing the black leather jacket of the Hell Patrol with the giant white pentagram embroidered on the back. He had jeans that didn't have holes in them. He was wearing expensive-looking aviator sunglasses, and his hair looked like he paid someone to cut it. He was talking to the staff sergeant. They were relaxed, laughing, holding coffee mugs. They looked about as close to normal people without stress that Rachel had ever seen. The sergeant saw her, pointed out the window, and waved. The tiefling greaser, with his cool guy jacket and glasses, lifted his mug towards her in a greeting gesture. The sergeant pointed towards the door. Rachel kept walking. The greaser, Hell Patrol tiefling and the sergeant went back to talking to each other. "Yeah, Yeah, by the way, if you heard that through the microphone, that's the hood outside, just like where Rachel lives. Rachel kept walking. The greaser Hell Patrol tiefling and the sergeant went back to talking to each other. They were probably talking about how she walked past every day and didn't come in, but she would. One day she would. Maybe they were right. When she got to the club, Johnny Octopus was standing outside waiting for her. His big arms and their tentacle tats folded over his broad chest made his bald head look like a pimple on top of a giant mound of flesh. "You okay, Ray?" Johnny asked. "I don't even fucking know anymore, Johnny. I feel like the hookers in this town are safer than me. At least the cops actually take care of them," Rachel admitted. "I meant, were you followed?" Johnny asked. "No, I didn't see him outside when I left the house. He must have a real job or something. Won't be out till 5. "One day at a time, Ray. It's all you can do. Come on. There's a lot of Demon War vets in here this afternoon. You know they sip their beers and tip their waitresses like good boys," Johnny said. Rachel went in stride and straight to the locker room, put on her uniform. When she came out onto the floor, she saw Tin Man and some of the other Marine regulars were there, sitting at a table. At least he has friends. It must be nice to have friends, Rachel thought. She pulled a Budweiser out of the cooler and popped the top. Tin Man always took a beer from her at the start of her shift and gave her a few bucks. "Here you go, honey," she said, putting the bottle down in front of Tin Man. "Can I get you boys a pitcher and some glasses?" "Rachel, are you okay? You look like shit. Johnny told us someone followed you home last night," Tin Man said. "It's fine, Tin Man. It's Johnny's job to worry about me. You just relax and let the girls take care of you," Rachel said. "I might have left my legs in that Humvee, Rachel, but if anyone ever tries to hurt you girls, I'll kick their asses." Rachel smiled. It occurred to her that the thought of Tin Man's titanium leg halfway up her stalker's ass was an almost comforting thought. "You just worry about Raven, sweetheart," Rachel said. She went back to the bar to run some drink orders. Behind her, she saw Tin Man and a couple of his buddies get up and move towards the main stage. The DJ had just announced Raven, and she always put on a show. Rachel was about to put some drinks on her tray and hit the floor again when Tiffany and Jen snuck up behind her, hooked her by the arms, and dragged her to the stage where there was an empty seat front and center. Before she could struggle and realize what was going on, the DJ boomed over the club on the PA system. "Our waitress Rachel had a rough night, boys. Let's show her some love." I'm never doing that again. The girl sat her down at the stage, and Raven slid down off the pole, rolled onto her back, spread her legs, and then kicked out and rolled over. She crawled across the stage on her hands and knees to where Rachel was sitting and grabbed her by the horns. Before Rachel could react, Raven's tongue was in her mouth, and the scent of her perfume hit her nostrils like a brick made of compacted potpourri. It didn't even occur to her to struggle, fight back, or kiss back. She didn't know what to do with the information that Raven was tongue-fucking her face. The boys at the table laughed and cheered and pushed their money in front of Rachel. Raven let go of her mouth and tried to take her hand and pull her up onto the stage, but Rachel found her consciousness again and resisted. "Oh, look, boys, she's shy," Raven said. The boys cheered. "You know, the shy ones are the kinky ones." The girls let her go, and Raven struggled out of the chair away from the stage to go back to the bar and go back to work. When she got there, Johnny was at the bar. "I can't believe that bitch!" Rachel gasped. "She was only trying to help," Johnny said. "She was trying to manipulate me into doing some kind of lesbian porno show with her. She's been trying to get me in on that act the whole time I've worked here," Rachel said. "She just wanted to help you make a little extra cash so you'd feel better after last night." "Well, a card or a gift basket would have been nice. I'm gonna give that bitch a piece of my mind when she gets off the stage." Johnny put his hand on her arm. Rachel, I know you didn't like it, but she really did want to help. You know Val, she's a free spirit, an exhibitionist. She gets into it and gets off on it, Johnny said. Well, I don't, Rachel said. I know that, Rachel. That's what I'm saying. She doesn't. She didn't mean any harm. She doesn't understand how that crossed the line with you because she doesn't think like that. She doesn't get that for some girls this is just a job, Johnny said. How do you know that, Johnny? I don't see you out there bussing tables or humping poles with heels on. Look, you're not wrong, and you got a right to be pissed off about it, and you went through some shit last night. But Ray, think about it like this. This club, these girls, they're the only friends you got in this shitty town, and that's barely enough. Do you want to make drama with your only friends? Rachel knew he was right. Will you talk to her? Tell her to cut that shit out? Rachel asked. I think the manager or the house madam should do that, Johnny said. I want you to do it, Johnny. They'll just encourage her. They probably want to get me up on the pole with her, Rachel said. Yeah, I'll do that for you, Ray, Johnny said. Rachel served her tables, came back to the bar for the next run. This time, Valerie was waiting for her with a wad of bills in her hand. Here's your cut, babe, Valerie said and pushed a stack of cash at her. You know I'm mad at you, right? Rachel asked, but she still took the money. I was just having fun and trying to help, Valerie said. Look, I was gonna go full bitch on you, but Johnny talked me down. Just let me know if you're gonna do something like that, okay? Rachel asked. I promise, Valerie said. Jenny came up to the bar. This place fucking sucks tonight. What's wrong? Rachel asked. There's only one group of dudes worth working this shift, and Valerie just pumped them dry with her little girl show. Tin Man and his Marine boys. You know those vets on disability only bring so much cash and then they tap out, Jenny explained. I'll share them with you. There's gotta be $1 left to squeeze. They'll still tip Rachel for drinks, Valerie said. What about the rest of the club? All the other tables are a bunch of wide-eyed lover boy pussies that only want to dance from their favorite girl. And that tiefling guy at table 4 is a real piece of shit, Jenny said. You mean fuck him because he's a broke-ass tiefling with no cash, or fuck him because he's actually just an asshole? Valerie asked. Go find out for yourself. Maybe I'm not his type, but I'm pretty sure he's just some angry dude that's mad because girls won't talk to him if he doesn't have money. Did he think that he wouldn't get more of that here? Rachel asked. Jenny rolled her eyes. Maybe he just needs a drink. I'll go sort him out, Rachel said, and took her pad and her tray over to table 4. She knelt down next to the seat to get eye level with him. He was a red tiefling with ram-like horns, a typical example of the species. He was wearing ratty Carhartts and looked like a construction worker. Hey babe, you want a drink? You got a certain kind of girl that you like? Rachel asked. I want the biggest whore in this dump, he said. Honey, you're confused. The girls here don't do that. You can pick up a hooker on 8th Street, Rachel said. They're not as pretty as the whores in here, the angry tiefling said. If you don't change your attitude and stop trash-talking my girls, you're gonna have to leave. A giant, fleshy shadow was moving up behind the tiefling in the chair. Rachel pretended not to notice the Herculean bulk of Johnny coming up behind him. There was a certain stealth that bouncers had. They weren't normally quiet people, bulls in china shops. But when there was the smell of dynamite and violence in the air, a shaved gorilla was suddenly very quiet in the moment before it struck. You tiefling sluts are all the same, selling yourselves to human men. You won't give tiefling guys a break because you know we don't have money, the angry tiefling rattled off. Honey, I'm only gonna tell you one more time. You can behave and let the girls be nice to you, or you can go jack off in the street. You really think any of these broke-ass disability vets paying us quarters out of their government checks have that much more money than you? Nobody in this town is rich. What's your price? He asked. She's not for sale. Johnny's voice boomed behind him, and the tiefling sat bolt upright in his chair, like an electrical shock just went through it. Johnny's meaty palms clapped down on the tiefling's shoulders. You're not ordering drinks, you're not putting dollars on the stage, and you're bothering my girls. It's time for you to go, he said. I'll have a beer, the tiefling squeaked. I wasn't giving you a list of options, Johnny said, hauled the tiefling up to his feet by his collar, and dragged him to the door. When he came back inside, Rachel was at the bar, reloading again. He came up behind her and put his hand on her shoulder. I could have handled him, Johnny. We might have at least got a beer out of him, he said. Sorry, she said. Fucked up her pronouns there. You've handled too much for one day, Ray. Don't turn around. What? Rachel fought the urge to look over her shoulder. Look slow, out of the corner of your eye. Look who just came in and sat down at table 2. That's him, isn't it? Rachel glanced at table 2. Her stalker with the receding hairline was just then sitting down in the chair, popping open a drink menu. It's him, Rachel said. Her blood turned to ice in her veins. Rachel, I want you to come home with me tonight, Johnny said. Johnny, we're not... No bullshit. He followed you home. He knows where your apartment is. You can sleep on my couch. I'll make you dinner. I don't want you to go back to your place tonight, Johnny said. Johnny, I have a gun. Since when? Johnny asked. Yesterday. I got one from the gangbangers that hold down the liquor store when I saw he was following me. It's hot, isn't it? Johnny asked. Of course it's hot, Rachel admitted. That's not smart, Ray. I know it's not smart, but he was on my ass. I needed protection. Tonight. End of shift. You get in my car, you come home with me, you sleep on my couch. Or I'll take the couch. You can have the bed. Whatever makes you feel better. I don't want you going home alone tonight, Johnny said. Rachel looked at him sideways. Rachel, I'm serious. A creeper used to follow my sister home for the club for 3 weeks. I met him at her place one night with a baseball bat and busted up his car. I'm not fucking around. I'll crash at your place tonight, Rachel said. Okay, look. I just need you to try to relax for the rest of your shift. Avoid him. I'll send the other girls to cover for you. Right now, he's here, and that's good. Because we know where he is, and we've got cameras and bouncers. You're safe while we've got eyes on him, Johnny said. So I should just hang out and act like I didn't just look right at him and know he was following me home last night? Rachel asked. That was your fuck up. You should have come back to the club, or ducked through an alley or something to lose him. You know these streets, but now he knows where you live. So which do you think is better? He can stay in here, or I can crack his fucking skull if he does something, or we can kick him out, and he can be waiting for you, masked up in a bush outside your building or some shit. Rachel sighed. I hate it, but I know you're right. It's better for us to keep an eye on him in here. Jenny came up to the bar again after a trip around the floor. What's the deal with fucking Ray's boyfriend at table 2? I just took a run at him and he asked for the white waitress to bring him a drink. Isn't that the same loser that came in here yesterday and only tipped her? Jenny, I need you to run his drink orders tonight, Johnny said. I'm a dancer, not a waitress, Jenny said. It's the only way anyone's gonna get money out of him. Also, he followed Rachel home last night. We don't want him around her. So kick his ass out, Jenny shrugged. He followed her home. He knows where her building is. I like him better right here where I can see him. If he leaves, he might go hang around her place, Johnny said. Oh, so I should get axe murdered by that weirdo so Ray doesn't have to? Jenny sneered. You're not his type, Jenny. He only wants to axe murder Rachel. He probably has some kind of weird fetish for her white skin or her horns or her cat eyes or some shit. I don't know what part of her he wants for his fucking Buffalo Bill collection, but you don't have it. You're both fucking awful. I'll take his damn drink orders myself, Rachel said. I don't like it. What's he going to do if you send another girl over there? Say he's not in my section? That will work once. He'll pick up his beer and move. Then what? I hopscotch around the club avoiding him? Besides, if one of the managers sees Jenny bussing tables instead of pumping customers for lap dances, she'll get chewed out. Just keep an eye on me, Johnny, Rachel said. You could always say you're not feeling well. I could call a cab, send you home sick. He'd only be right behind that cabbie. Besides, I can't miss work, even if it means getting stalked, Rachel said. Before Johnny could say anything, Rachel picked up her pad and her tray and was off again. She approached table 2 from behind, staring at the back of the stalker's head. Her heart was in her throat. Her stomach was in her lungs. Her toes burned inside of her heels. She felt like she was digging a hole to the center of the earth with the spikes of her stilettos. Can I get you something, honey? She asked, making sure she was at least 6 inches out of arm's reach. Gin and tonic and whatever you'd like, he said, trying to order for her. Sorry, babe, but I don't drink on shift. Company policy. 1 G&T, though, coming right up, Rachel replied. Pour that shit heavy, Dylan. I want to knock this fucker out, Rachel said, as she handed the bartender the ticket. She ran the drink back and put it down in front of him. She watched his hands intently, with her slit cat eyes, as he reached for his wallet. The leather folded open. He drew out a wad of bills to count out a tip. But something else was in the pocket with the cash. Rachel focused on it, saw that it was an individually wrapped tablet of some kind, in one of those foil-backed pop-out sheets. She wondered if it was a date rape drug, and if it was meant for the drink he meant to buy her. She chewed her lower lip, tasted the lipstick on her teeth with her tongue. She went to go collect drink orders from Tin Man's table and came back to the bar. He's got some kind of pill in his wallet, Rachel said. Do you think it's a roofie? Johnny asked. I don't know, Johnny. You're a guy. You tell me. Do dudes just walk around all day with a tab of X or an ibuprofen in their pocket with their keys and shit? He wanted to buy me a drink. You said no. I'm a strip club waitress, not an idiot. All right. Well, if you did it once, you can do it again. Just keep jumping gin down his throat until he's too hammered to be a threat and we're home free. I guess that's the strategy we should have started with, Rachel said. The shift passed mostly uneventfully. Throughout the course of it, Rachel reloaded her stalker 4 times, bringing him 5 heavy-handed gin and tonics in total. By the time she brought the last one out, she felt like she was just force-feeding him the Beefeater bottle. But he didn't seem to get any drunker. She began to wonder if the man was even human. Johnny caught up with her at the bar after he went to the bathroom. I just pissed on his cocktails. You mean you used the same urinal as him and saw him piss them out? Rachel asked. No, I mean I literally pissed on his cocktails. There's ice cubes and cocktail straws in the urinal. He's taking them in the men's room and dumping them so he can stay sharp for the main event. So the plan didn't work at all. Yeah, well, of course he's the designated driver for his rape mobile. Don't worry. He'll have to admit defeat when you get in my car, Johnny said. The stalker knew it was the end of Rachel's shift before she did. She lost track of time, didn't think about clocking out until she saw him fidgeting, restless in his chair, realized that he was eager to leave, waiting for her. She changed back into her street clothes, ducked out the back door to the parking lot, Johnny was waiting for her, already clocked out. They walked together to his beat-up old hot rod. "It's a money pit and it burns oil, but it's your chariot for the evening," Johnny said, opening the door. "Can I drive it?" Rachel asked. "Can you?" Johnny retorted. "You mean like, can I actually drive? Like, do I have a license?" Rachel asked. "Yeah, a lot of the girls don't drive. I guess they never really taught you guys how to be self-sufficient adults at the orphanage." "You never saw me hauling ass around town in my Beetle as a kid?" Rachel asked. "I saw a couple fuck around teenagers hooning around in a piece of shit Volkswagen, but not you," Johnny said. "Yeah, you must have missed me. They crashed it and sunk it in the drainage canal. I was the only one who could drive worth a shit," Rachel said. "I'll take your word for it." "So can I drive?" Rachel asked. "Girl, this is a '69 GTO. It might be a clapped-out rat trap that I can barely afford to keep running, but it's a lot more car than your shitty little Beetle. Besides, I don't want you to get any crazy ideas like running down that stalker in the parking lot and getting blood all over my car," Johnny said. Rachel got into the passenger seat and sighed. "Should have just shot his ass." They pulled out of the parking lot, and half a block later, Rachel saw the familiar headlights of the champagne Honda behind them. "He's following us," she said. "Good. I want him to see you go into my place with me. If he sees you with me, he might assume we're together and not worth the trouble of fucking with you," Johnny said. He pulled up the street. The champagne Honda followed. He hit a string of green lights, and then finally hit a red at 8th and stopped at the intersection. Alex the prostitute was on the corner. She leaned into the passenger window when she saw Rachel in the car. "You got your tail again, honey," she said, referring to the stalker's Honda. "I know, but I've got backup tonight," Rachel nodded at Johnny. She noticed that Alex had a black eye, partially covered in makeup. "Who did that to you?" "I can handle myself." Alex smiled weakly, pulled her head out of the window. The light turned green. "You know her?" Johnny asked. "From the orphanage. All the trash. You know, this town's not very big, and as tieflings we don't have a lot of options. Most of the kids grew up. They're on the street or in the club. Holes and poles. It's the only thing anyone hires us for," Rachel admitted. "You want to stop at your place and grab anything? Change of clothes?" Johnny asked. "Not with that Honda 1 car length behind us." "All right." Johnny turned the corner, and instead of going straight towards Rachel's complex, he turned left. Rachel watched the rearview mirror. She saw the Honda stop, hesitate, and then follow. He obviously had to think for a moment when he realized she wasn't going to get out at her apartment. Johnny stopped at a red light, popped the brake, and when the light turned green, he burned out on the Honda, leaving it behind him in a puff of smoke. With a squeal and a roar from the V8, the GTO was off like a shot, with a noticeable groan of metal from spot welds in the bodywork. "You shifted late in the second gear," Rachel noted as they pulled up to the next light. "You some kind of race car driver?" Johnny asked petulantly. "I wanted to be one when I was a little girl, then I found out the only jobs they let tieflings do involve heels or hot pants." "It's a stepping stone to something better," Johnny said. "Maybe for your sister. She's human. She had a choice." "What'd she do after college?" Rachel asked. Johnny looked away and adjusted the driver's side mirror. She didn't live through the war. Rachel suddenly felt like she had swallowed a brick. "Johnny, I'm sorry." "It's okay, you didn't know. We're here." Johnny pulled up to the curb in front of a shabby apartment complex, only marginally more tasteful looking than Rachel's place. She got out of the car and was relieved when he put his keys into the door of one of the ground floor units near the curb. Creeper and the Honda crawled down the street at 5 miles per hour, unable to park. Rachel and Johnny were safely in the apartment with the door bolted before he was even halfway up the block. Rachel slumped down on the couch. It was ratty. She could tell it was broken when she fell into the cushions. but it was covered in warm blankets and felt comfy. She suddenly felt like she was 2 or 3 times her own weight, was being drained like a toilet flushing. Her composure and her will ran out of her onto the floor. She was exhausted by every definition of the word she knew. "You look like shit," Johnny said. "You should eat something." This whole episode in my life has been a seasoning of rat poison on one big moldy cyanide and bullshit sandwich. Rachel exhaled. "I should have driven through somewhere on the way home. It's hard to see you're tired, Rachel. That porcelain skin doesn't show any fatigue. Do you want a drink?" Johnny asked. "I'll have the stiffest version of whatever you've got," Rachel said. Johnny went into his kitchenette, opened the cabinet, and brought out a bottle of... Man, I fucked up. Where's that cat here to blame it on? Alright, Johnny went into his kitchenette, opened the cabinet, and brought out a bottle of wild turkey. He grabbed a whiskey glass, washed it in the sink, and put a single ice cube from the freezer in it. He handed the bottle and the glass to Rachel. She took one look at the glass, shrugged, put it down on the other side of the couch, and started chugging the handle. She got 2 or 3 shots down before Johnny wrestled the bottle out of her hands and took it from her. "I'm going to ignore that and just say you're traumatized and need to relax. But if you puke on my carpet, Rachel..." "I'm fine. I just want to be drunk right now, to not have to give a shit. I've had my guard up permanently for the last 48 hours, she said. "Well, you shouldn't be hitting that shit on an empty stomach. You want to split a freezer pizza?" Johnny asked and went to heat up the oven. "Yeah, okay," Rachel said, realizing she was hungry, and as a slim woman, probably drunk as soon as all the whiskey sloshed into her belly. "Also, I should probably switch to beer." "Rachel, are you okay? Are you really okay?" Johnny asked. "I'm not, but it'll help. I need to relax, to just give up control for one night. I'm so tired of worrying. You asked me to crash here tonight, so I'm crashing," Rachel said. Johnny brought her a beer. In the time it took the oven to cook the pizza, she finished it and asked for another. But he didn't give her a second until the food came out of the oven. They ate the pizza in silence, and Rachel nursed the second beer until the last drop. She ate the last slice of pizza. "Do you have any weed?" she asked. "I'm out. I didn't know you were a smoker," Johnny said. "Not normally, but I want to get out of my own head tonight." "Think you're fine where you're at, Ray. You're drunk. Can you stand up?" Johnny asked. "I can, but your shitty couch is making it difficult," Rachel said, referring to being trapped in the sunken cushions and busted upholstery. Johnny took her hand and pulled her to her feet. She wavered like a newborn doe, but stood. He walked her over to the bed to lay her down. "I'll sleep on the couch," he said. "It's your bed. Besides, I'm not tired yet. There's plenty of night to kill," Rachel said, sitting up. "You're definitely tired, and you're definitely drunk." He turned away to go back to the kitchen. Rachel grabbed the tail of his t-shirt as he turned his back. "Wait." He stopped. "Fuck me," Rachel said. "You're drunk," Johnny said. "I want to be drunk. Fuck me, I want to feel good. Take control of my body. I just want to have one moment where my only concern is my own pleasure. I'm sick of worrying about everything," Rachel said. "That's the whiskey talking." He brushed her off, went to the kitchenette. From the bed, Rachel heard the water in the faucet and the clatter of dishes in the sink. She looked around the room for something, anything, an object to throw at him, a bottle to drink, something that would comfort her in her inebriated aggression. The faucet stopped. She heard his heavy footsteps, and he was back again, standing over the bed. He was breathing harder, but Rachel looked up and saw in his eyes that there was no struggle, no conflict. He was a man, and men tried to do right, but in the end, they were only men. He grabbed her by the ankles and tore the shoes off her feet, threw them on the floor. He shoved her body across the bed and climbed onto the mattress. His lips were on hers. Rachel closed her eyes, relaxed her mouth, and let him kiss her. Her bottom lip was clutched, gently, kinky, between his teeth. Then his tongue was in her mouth. He tasted like sweat, and he smelled like old t-shirts and a cheap bar of soap. But the scent was so raw and masculine that the power of it turned her on. Strong hands tore open her Daisy Dukes, wrenching the button fly open. Tough, thick knuckles dove into YouTube! Womp, womp, womp. Alright. Sorry, everybody, but this is definitely an erotic scene. And I've decided that I'm not going to read the erotic scenes on YouTube, because I'm pretty sure they will shit can me, because this stuff is really, really hot and heavy. I haven't decided where it's going to go. I do want the erotic scenes to go somewhere where the audience can see it and read it for themselves, but just not on YouTube. I don't know what I'm going to do yet. It's an issue we're going to revisit. Just to let you know right now, they don't have sex, they don't make love, they're definitely fucking. You're going to see how this relationship goes. It's one of my favorite parts of the story. Rachel and Johnny have it kind of ends up being a bad romance. It's a totally toxic situation, but that's what makes it so hot. Alright. Okay, I'll read you this line. "Oh, God bless whoever taught you that," she gasped. Yeah, that was a good one. Hold on. Sex. 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 There we go. Okay. So, one of the things I need to say about the sex scenes, especially, in this first sex scene, the scene when Johnny and Rachel consummate their relationship, the first sex scene in the book, this is important. It wasn't just me writing sex for the sake of writing sex. Something happens during their erotic episode that is relevant to the story. So I skipped like a whole page worth of just straight hardcore fucking to get to this part, because this is relevant. It happens right at the end of the chapter. Okay. Something under her skin squirmed. Johnny felt it as well. Suddenly held his breath. "Ray, did those weird bumps on your shoulders just move?" he whispered in her ear. "Yeah, I guess they twitch when I get fucked hard enough," Rachel breathed. "Well, okay, as long as it's normal. Sometimes you tiefling girls have weird extra bits," he said. In the back of her mind, in the last few sober brain cells, surrounded by the ones soaked in alcohol and hormones, a thought occurred to Rachel. "What do you mean, you tiefling girls? How many have there been?" It wasn't a good enough question to be asking right then, especially not while he was laying on top of her, and she was enjoying the smothering warmth of his skin. Besides, there was another concern. That twitch wasn't normal. Whatever was on her back never twitched before. But she was drunk, tired, basking in the afterglow. So rather than concern herself with it, she drifted off and slept like she hadn't slept in years. Hey, thanks for listening, everybody. That was Chapter 2 of Hell Patrol, and this is the Chapter 2 recap. First thing I want to say about Chapter 2 is this is the last of the long shitload of stuff happening at once chapters. Chapter 1 and 2 do a ton of groundwork. And all the chapters after Chapter 2 slow down a little in terms of how much stuff is actually happening in the story. which means that when I say slow down a little, like what I mean is like the density of shit that's important to the plot. The pace of the story actually picks up in the chapters after this because I'm not trying to hammer so many like core things about the universe home. Like that, I have to introduce so much crap in the first 2 chapters just so that you have an idea of what's going on later when stuff picks up and starts happening. So let's talk about what happened in chapter 2. The first and most important thing that happens in chapter 2 is that we meet Rachel's stalker. And then, in order to protect herself from the stalker, Rachel buys a stolen gun from a gangbanger on the street. Not a great idea, but you know, I'd like to see you have great ideas when some fucking weirdo is following you down the street in a car. If you know you're a single woman walking home at night, so we don't blame Rachel for her bad decisions. She's under a shitload of stress. Okay. So next we meet Alex and the horror cops, and Rachel almost gets caught holding the gun. And these guys are horror cops. What is a horror cop? So a horror cop is a genre trope where, like in a horror story, anytime you meet the police, they're either corrupt or incompetent or don't believe you. So, like, the worst thing that the cops can do when you run into the cops, especially when you don't want to meet them, that's always what happens with horror cops. And are they ever around when you actually do need them? No, of course not, because they're horror cops. So in Hell Patrol, yeah, there are horror cops. And they are never ever going to do shit for Rachel. You know, just count on that. Okay. So don't think she's going to the cops on her stalker. They're horror cops. Moving on. So Johnny makes Rachel promise to call him if anything happens. This is a big deal, because what we're going to find out is that as Rachel is put under more and more stress and trauma and just the general difficulty of living her life, she has to make a lot of decisions, and most of them are wrong. And she isn't gonna use her relationships and her resources properly. And we're gonna see whether or not she actually fulfills her promise to call Johnny whenever she's in trouble. So this is something that's going to become a recurring theme with Rachel. Rachel does have a very significant self-esteem issue that we've seen a little of, and we're gonna see more of it. She bites off more than she can chew. She puts everyone else's concern ahead of herself. She has a hard time really claiming her own agency and putting herself first. And this is something that she's going to suffer for a long time before it gets better. And there will be a moment in the story where there is a snap, and Rachel will flip. And you're going to see it, and you're going to love it. But right now, just understand the fact that Rachel is dealing with a lot of shit, and she's got a lot of problems, and she's not making good decisions, and she's kind of being a shitty person because of it. Alright, so Johnny makes Rachel promise to call him if anything happens. We learn more about Rachel's passion for driving in race cars. Rachel is a gearhead. Rachel likes cars. That's Rachel's thing. She's a little tomboyish in that, I guess. You know, girls can like cars, and Rachel is definitely a girl that likes cars. So she meets up with Alex again on her way to work, and they talk about going into Hell Patrol together. Alex reveals that the reason she's on the street as a prostitute is because the orphanage lost her paperwork, and she doesn't have a birth certificate or an SSN. She can't prove that she's a U.S. citizen, so she's out here on the street living the hard life. Alright, so Rachel gets sexually harassed at work by Valerie. We meet a tiefling incel. Tieflings can be incels just like humans can be incels. This is just Rachel having a really bad day. It wasn't bad enough that she's got a stalker, but, everybody else has to be shitty to her, too. The stalker comes into the club again. And Rachel sees that there is a date rape drug in his wallet. He tries to buy her a drink, but she doesn't take that bait. So she knows he has a roofie, and he wants to give it to her, but he doesn't get the chance. Okay, so then Rachel tries to get him drunk. Her goal is to just get him so fucking smashed that he can't hurt her. But what Johnny finds out when he goes to the bathroom is there's a shitload of dumped cocktails in the urinal. The stalker has been taking the drinks that Rachel has been giving him, and he's going into the bathroom and pouring them out. Because obviously he wants to stay sober so he can do horrible things to her later and still be sharp for it. Good times. No, not really. Scary as shit. Okay. Rachel goes home with Johnny to avoid her stalker. They get drunk and have sex. Yeah, okay. Got that part. Okay, after sex, Rachel realizes that something new is happening to her body that she hasn't felt before. So I think briefly in Chapter 1 or early in Chapter 2, there's a slight mention of the twitch in Rachel's shoulders. After she has sex with Johnny at the end of Chapter 2, the twitch escalates to a squirm, as if that, there really is something going on with her body happening on her back, and she has no idea what it is and doesn't know anything about it. But what we can infer is that she always gets that weird feeling whenever there is an emotional peak, when there is a moment of peak emotion, whether it's aggression or stress, fear, sexual satisfaction. Anytime Rachel has an extreme emotion, she feels the twitch, and something is happening back there, and she doesn't know what it is. And that's Chapter 2. What's going to happen in Chapter 3? Chapter 3 is the relationship drama. You guys are going to like this. Oh yeah, and Chapter 3 we also start getting into some of the devil's bargain shit around Hell Patrol. We're going to finally meet that recruiter in Chapter 3, the guy that's been staring at Rachel out the window the whole time. And Rachel's going to talk to him. They're going to have a little something to say, and it's going to be a little creepy. You're going to love it.